Good evening, children. Welcome to Aveti's grade 10 grammar class. Ajira amar subject hochi clauses. Clause re amara jo 10th standard bohi re amara achi syllabus. Basically, it is noun clause and relative clauses. So, aji ame will first try to understand what is a clause, and then we will only go through noun clause today. Next class re we'll do the relative clauses. Okay, children. So, let's begin. So, what exactly is a clause? A clause is a group of words that includes a subject and a verb. So basically, it is a group of words, jotare gote subject hai or verb hai, that constitutes a clause. Clause ro dita variety. Gote hochi independent clause, a gote hochi subordinate clause. Now, before we go to independent and subordinate clauses, let us try to understand the difference between a clause and a phrase. Can I exam re eta bhi pray question padiba to differentiate between a clause and a phrase? Acha jemti hame sikhiche chua mane clause re there is always a subject and a verb. For example, eti tame dekhi parthuva. Let's say we take this example. I went to a school. So here the subject is I and went is your verb and to school becomes your object. All right. So subject or word thille hi setaku clause beli kohajiba. Whereas phrase re there is no subject verb component. For example, there's something called a noun phrase. Example, best friend. Mane tama friend sangare gote adjective par jodi jodi hela tahle best friend he gala. Verb phrase was working. Adjective phrase very pretty. Etare you can notice that there is no subject and there is no verb. It is just basically two words which may make a meaning on their own or which may not make a meaning on their own. Okay. So, for example, prepositional phrase in the bin. Kimba adverb phrase really slowly. So, a subu jagare not necessarily that could a meaning tamgo full formed meaning asiba. You can have a meaning or may not have a meaning. All right. Now, when it comes to differentiating between clause and phrase, I'm going to exercise kariba so that tamane pura bisare clear habo. First one, let's take here 1 minute, children. So the first question is, faced with so many problems, I decided to get professional help. Now, jota red remark hechi, you have to identify that. Set a phrase kimba clause. You have to identify. So it is red remark on mark hechi, faced with so many problems. So please identify whether this is a phrase or a clause. Let's see what the right answer is. The right answer is it's a phrase. Why? Because faced with so many problems. It has a complete meaning tame pauna. It has a complete meaning kichi nai. Faced with so many problems. Tamane I faced a lot of problems. Kina mo both today problem ko face karili. Tamane kona kichi ote complete meaning nahi. Also there is no subject and there is no verb component. Okay. So jehetu both these things are missing, it is a phrase. Now the second question. She arrived to work on time. A sentence sochi, she arrived to work on time in spite of leaving home so late. Jota red remark kara hai ji, she arrived to work on time. Is it a phrase or a clause? Let's see what the answer is. The answer is it is a clause. Why? Because it is subject achi she and then arrived achi verb and subject a verb jehetu achi. And also she arrived to work on time. It is a complete sentence by itself. It has got a complete meaning, not a sentence. It has got a complete meaning. So hence this is a clause. Now third question, Chamane. In the morning, it is best to get up early. The underlining sentence is, it is best to get up early. Tell me whether this is a phrase or a clause. The right answer is, this is again a clause. Why? Because it has got a subject, it, and then get up. Get up, it is the verb, there's a verb. So there is a subject verb agreement. Hence, this is a clause. And also the sentence, the words have a complete meaning. It is best to get up early. Mane sigra utiba is the best. So it has got a complete meaning. Now the last one, having always been keen on caring for people, Susan decided to become a nurse. So I'm underlining line hochi, having always been keen on caring for people. Is this a phrase or a clause? Please identify, children. Let's see what the right answer is. The right answer is, again, it is a phrase, because having always been keen on caring for people, it doesn't have a subject, doesn't have a verb component, and also it doesn't complete your sentence. It doesn't give a full meaning, doesn't make much of a sense. Hence, this is a phrase. So, jotare complete meaning paiboni, jotare subject or verb nothibo, that is called a phrase. Jotare subject and verb component thai, that is called a clause. And a clause mostly, jota independent clause jaka jota thai, jota maage padiba, they all have a complete meaning. All right. Now let's go to the next one. Let us see the types of clauses, children. There are two types of clauses. One is a main or an independent clause, and the second is a subordinate or a dependent clause. Now, subordinate or dependent clause, tini variety. One is a noun clause, there is an adjective clause, and also an adverb clause. So basically, we divide them into noun clause and relative clauses. So relative clauses, adjective clause, adverbial clauses, sabu ase. But basically, clauses are of two types, independent and dependent. So say narui tame jani partuba, independent mane say words, jetike words form hochi gote clause pai. Say clause tar independent meaning gote baharibo. Tar gote individual meaning thai. Whereas a dependent clause re tar individual meaning ase only when you attach the main clause. Let us see how it works. Now, how to identify the main clause and the subordinate clause? This is very important, children. Main clause have a subject and verb that can stand on their own. This is very important. Let me show you. They have a subject and a verb, and they can stand on their own. This is very important. That means those group of words which form a clause can stand on their own. Tamane tapsaman kora gote independent meaning bahare. How? Let us see. Ashley often thought about her grandparents. It is a subject achi. Ashley thought achi verb. It is a proper group of words with a proper meaning which can stand on their own. More or less like a sentence. Clause jati gote independent tame clause number. It is more or less like a simple sentence. All right. For example, Ashley often thought about her grandparents, or the sun rises in the east. Okay. So, jotare gote independent meaning bahare sentence ra, words ra, that can be called as a main or a independent clause. Okay. It is very similar to a simple sentence. Got it? Now, let's see what is a subordinate clause. A subordinate clause always it begins with a conjunction and therefore cannot stand on their own. They leave the reader thinking yes and then. Tamane question ase. Jo sentence re gote question tamuko asibo, jotare complete meaning paibani, a tamara gote doubt kimba question asijibo, ta pore kono, ta pore next what. So those are called dependent or subordinate clauses. For example, though I only started last week. Ajo clause ta, though I only started last week. It starts with a conjunction though, and you are in a doubt. You have a question. Tapare konala. I start. Mu jodi ho last week start karli. Tapare mu sentence bond kar dehi. That means what? Tapare konala mu jani parni. So these type of words which unite to form a clause and which are not on their own. They cannot stand on their own. Tankor individual standing nathai. Kimba gote independent meaning bahareni, those are called subordinate or dependent clauses. Okay. So though I started last week, I could complete my homework only today. Then the sentence gets complete. Right? So let's take one more example. I don't know if you can see this, children. So there's one more example that has come up. I'm not able to see on the screen. Never mind. For example, I can give you one more sentence. while I was doing my homework, or let's say when my father came home. When my father came home, then I stop. Then there's a question mark. Okay, you don't know what is happening next. So such sentences are called clauses, which cannot have independent standing of their own. Now let's go to the next slide. Now let us try to identify the main clause and the subordinate clause in these respective sentences. Now, do you know when the next train arrives? Do you know when the next train arrives? So here, children, can you tell me which could be the main clause and which is the subordinate clause? Normally, all these subordinate clauses, they will start with all these noun clauses. They start with when, what, how, that. Okay, even prepositional clauses bithay, on, about, whoever. So all these words, already bahire mentioned heji, you can take a list on that and memorize bhi kari paribo. So it normally starts with these words. So in this sentence, what happens, children? Let me identify this for you. Do you know? This is your main clause because it can stand on its own. Do you know? Tame jani chaki? That's a normal question. Do you know? Then the next one, when the train arrives, this particular thing, this particular word, this group of words, when the train arrives, does it have an independent standing of its own? When do you know when the train arrives? When the train arrives, does it have an independent meaning of its own? No, you still, when the train arrives, what? The next question will be what? So do you know when the train arrives? In this case, do you know is the main clause when the next train arrives. When, not when the train arrives. When the train arrives could be independent. You can say when the train arrives, I shall go and get my tickets. So you can say something. But here the sentence is, do you know when the next train arrives? When the next train arrives is not a sentence that can stand on its own. Hence, that is a subordinate clause. Do you know is the main clause. When the next train arrives is your subordinate clause. Next one. He told me that he was ready. He told me, this is your main clause, and that he was ready. That he was ready is your subordinate clause. All right. That he was ready. There's no meaning to that. Okay. There's not an independent meaning to that. Hence, that is a subordinate clause. He told me that he was ready. Then only it makes sense. Next, I asked the boy how old he was. Let's identify the main clause here, children. Here, the main clause would be I asked the boy. And what is the subordinate clause? How old he was. How old he was cannot give you a complete meaning on his own. How old are you is a complete meaning. How old he was doesn't make any sense. I asked the boy how old he was. Then it makes complete sense. Whereas I asked the boy is a complete sense, is a complete sentence with a complete meaning. I asked the boy, Muse chua ko pachali, how old he was. All right. So then he waved his hand and boarded the bus. Children, this is a very important sentence. He waved his hand. This is one complete sentence. He waved his hand. Say hatta halela. So this is a main clause. Then and 80 you can always write and he boarded the bus. He waved his hand and he boarded the bus. Instead of that, what we are saying, he waved his hand and we use the conjunction and boarded the bus. Hence, these are two main clauses, children. Boarded the bus is not a subordinate clause because we are using this conjunction and. Joti bhi tame pray conjunction and dekhibo, it is always two main clauses or two simple sentences which are being clubbed together. Hence, this is also a main clause. He waved his hand and he boarded the bus. Jadio he is silent, it means there is a he. He ta achi, jota me use karune. Hence, both these sentences are main clauses and not, there's no subordinate clause in this particular sentence. Now let's go to the next one. Jack fell down and he broke his crown. In this also, children, see this. This is very important. Jack fell down. He broke his crown. Aren't they independent sentences on their own? Don't they have an independent meaning of their own? Jack fell down. Jack podigala. He broke his crown. Se ta crown bhangidala. Okay. So both these sentences have a proper meaning and they are joined by this conjunction and. Hence, this is also a main clause of this sentence, and he broke his crown is also a main clause in the sentence. In this particular sentence, there is no subordinate clause. Okay, so subordinate clauses are those clauses which cannot stand on their own, and they normally begin with when, what, how, that, okay, whoever. So all these things, the sentences begin either in the middle you will find, or at the beginning or at the ending, but they start with such words. And these words, these clauses, hence are not independent of their own because they do not carry correct meaning. Okay, then grammatically you will not find a complete meaning. Hence, these clauses are called subordinate clauses. Sometimes the meaning could be there, then it becomes a independent clause or a main clause. All right. Now, let us understand what is a noun clause. A noun clause is a group of words with a subject and a verb that serves as a noun in the sentence. So we know a clause always has a subject and a verb. So if that particular clause serves as a noun in that sentence, then that is called a noun clause. Okay. So like in a normal noun, ଆମେ कौन refer करू गोटे place, animal, thing को. So a noun को जेतेबेले गोटे clause replace करे, that is called a noun clause. Example, let's see. Now, let's see a few things about a noun clause. Noun clause include a subject and verb, but they function as nouns. So both the subject and verb thai kiri, say clause ta noun ro role ta play kari. Then it is called a noun clause. Second one, they are dependent clauses and they cannot function alone as a complete sentence. They're always dependent clauses, children. This is very important. They are not main clauses. They're always dependent clauses. Next, you can replace a noun clause with a pronoun. So if you have to identify a noun clause, can it be replaced by a pronoun? Then it becomes a noun clause. Example. All right. Noun clauses often include one of these words, the WH words such as who, what, when, where, why, and the related words whatever, whenever, and whomever. Other question words such as how, that are also part of noun clause. Now let us see this, children. I cannot express how sorry I am. Let me show you this. See, I cannot express. This is your main clause. How sorry I am. This is a noun clause. Because number one, it has got a subject and it has got a verb. Secondly, it is not independent of its own. And it begins with the words how. I cannot, and more so, can you replace it with a pronoun? Yes, I cannot express myself. Okay, I cannot express my feelings or I cannot express myself. So when you can replace it with a pronoun, then it is a noun clause. Okay, so tingta jinsa chamane, it has a subject and verb that forms as a noun. Okay, but functions as a noun, and then it is dependent. Second thing is it is dependent, and thirdly, it can be replaced by a pronoun. Then it becomes a noun clause. All right, next. Let's see this. Noun clause can be, okay, now what are the functions it can play? A noun clause can be the subject of a sentence. It can be the object of a transitive verb in the sentence, subject of the sentence, object of a transitive verb in the sentence, a complement of a verb, and then it can be an object of a preposition, and it can also be an expression in apposition to a noun or a pronoun. So panchta jinsa. It can be a subject, it can be an object, it can be a complement of the verb, it can be an object of a preposition, and it can also be an expression in apposition to another noun or pronoun. Got it? Now, let us now first try to understand how it works. So noun clause is a subject of a sentence. Now, ATM example Timta example niya chichwa mane. What Alicia said made her friends cry. Jota bhi underline hichi block letter re. That is your noun clause. What Alicia said. And here it is performing the subject of the sentence. How we will see. How. What made her friends cry? When you are asking the subject, I already sikhi in your previous classes. How do you find out the subject of a sentence? You ask the question what. What Alicia said. Sorry, what with the subject. What with the verb. What made her friends cry? The answer you'll get is what Alicia said. The answer will be what Alicia said. Hence, this noun clause becomes the subject, which is represented by S here, the subject of the sentence. The second one, what Megan wrote surprised her family. Now, what is the question we asked with the verb? What surprised her family? Then you get the answer, what Megan wrote. This one, what Megan wrote. Hence, this is again your subject of the sentence. That becomes your noun clause, which is functioning as the subject of the sentence. The last one, how the boy behaved was not very polite. Now, what is the noun clause here? How the boy behaved. This is your noun clause. Now, how do you know it is the subject of the sentence? What is the question you ask? Who was not very polite? So either you ask the question what or who was, how the boy behaved. So we ask what was not very polite. So you ask with the verb, what was not very polite? And the answer is how the boy behaved was not very polite. So when you ask these questions to the verb, then you get an answer that whether it is a subject or no. Tame what question pacharla matre tame cheta subject ki nai tame paijibo. First, you have to identify First, you have to identify the noun clause in the sentence and then find out whether it is the subject of the sentence. How do you find out whether it is the subject of the sentence? When you pose these questions, what or how, then you get an answer which will identify the subject of the sentence. So like I said, these questions, they will help you in identifying the noun clause as a subject of the sentence. Now, just like all nouns, noun clause can act as the direct object of a verb. So first, till a subject, how the noun clause can act as the direct object of a verb. For example, first example, the pharmacist checked that the prescription was correct. That the prescription was correct is the noun clause. And that is the object. How do we find out? You ask the same thing. You ask the question again. What is the question you ask? What didn't she... Sorry, these are the... What didn't she check? What did the pharmacist check that the prescription was correct? So we ask, what did the pharmacist check? Not this one, children. This is wrong. This is by mistake. I think it has come here. So the pharmacist checked that the prescription was correct. So what do we ask? What did the pharmacist check? Then the answer will be that the prescription was correct. Then you get the answer in the form of the noun clause. That becomes the object because you're asking a question. All right. Next one. He didn't know why the stove wasn't working. So what question do we ask? What he didn't know. What didn't he know? Kaun se jani parlani? Why the stove wasn't working. So what is the noun clause here, children? The noun clause here is why the stove wasn't working. So then how do you know it is the object? When you ask the question, what didn't he know? You have to ask the question what didn't he know? Okay, when you ask the question to the subject, you get the answer. What didn't the subject know? The subject did not know why the stove wasn't working. Hence, why the stove wasn't working becomes your object. Noun clause functioning as the object. Now, they now understand that you should not cheat on a test. So what is the question you ask, children? What do they understand? What question you ask to the verb? What do they understand? Then you get your answer that you should not cheat on a test. That becomes the object in the sentence because they is your subject and that you should not cheat on a test becomes your object. That you should not cheat on a test is a noun clause which is functioning as the object. All right. Now, let's go to the other one. A noun clause can also serve as a subject complement. A subject complement modifies, describes, or completes the subject of a clause. For example, Carly's problem was that she did not practice enough. So what was Carly's problem? That she didn't practice enough. Now the answer will be here with along with that, along with the noun clause tama jo to start hochi sei to tame answer ta paibo. Now notice here that in each case the verb is a form of to be. See, to be the form. For example, was, to be the form, was, to be the form, was, to be the form. So whenever there is a verb in the form of to be, then that the noun clause following that verb form becomes your complement, functions as a complement. Let's see the next one. Harry's crowning achievement at school was when he became the class president. So what is the noun clause? We need to identify the noun clauses when he became the class president. Now, what is the question you ask? Harry's crowning achievement at school was when he became the class president. So when you ask the question, what was Harry's crowning achievement? It was when he became the class president. You just cannot say he became class president. You have to use the entire noun clause beginning with when he became the class president. So that is complementing Harry's crowning achievement. It is a complement to the subject. Hence, this becomes here the noun clause is functioning as a subject complement. Next, Darla's excuse for being late was that she forgot to set her alarm. Here again, children, dekhi paribo was is there. So to be the form hochi was. The verb is a form of to be. And here also, what was Darla's excuse for being late? Darla's excuse for being late was that she forgot to set her alarm. That she forgot. Your answer will be the complete noun clause. Pura noun clause ta hi tamara answer asibo because it is complementing the subject Darla. All right, children. Slightly confusing, but when you do the exercises, it will be fine. Jette exercise karibo, jette tamara clarity asibo. Now, noun clauses are also, they act as objects of preposition. This is very easy, actually, children, because each of these sentences should be complete before the addition of the preposition. See, this is a very important thing. When you're using a preposition, for example, you should pay attention to what I say. To what I say. The preposition is to what I say. The entire thing is your noun clause, and it is coming before the preposition to. Because it is coming before the preposition to, this becomes an noun clause, which is acting as an object of a preposition. Now, one more important thing, each of these sentences should be complete before the addition of preposition. Mane tame preposition ta add kariba purbaru, is this sentence complete? You should pay attention. Is this sentence complete before the addition of the preposition? Yes, it is complete. You should pay attention. Mane tame attention dabaku padiba. Tame concentrate karyaku padiba. Isn't it complete? It is complete. Now, let us see this. Second one. There is no meaning in what you say. So, in what you say, the noun clause is coming before the preposition. What is the preposition? The preposition is in. So, there is no meaning. Does this sentence have a complete meaning? The sentence before the preposition. Preposition purbara sentence ta complete ke nahi dekhibaku pade. Yes, it is complete. There is no meaning. Aro kichi matlab nahi. It's a complete sentence. So hence, what you say, which is coming after the preposition, the noun clause is acting as object of a preposition. Okay. Now, let's see this one. Josephine is not responsible for what Alex decided to do. Now, ATM preposition is for, and what is your noun clause? Is what Alex decided to do. And why we say it is acting as the object of preposition? Because the sentence before the preposition, Josephine is not responsible. It is a complete sentence. Isn't it so? It is a complete sentence. Josephine bilkul responsible nuhe. Bilkul bhi samajhdar nuhe. All right. So hence, what Alex decided to do, which is coming after the preposition, we call this noun clause as an object of preposition. The function, the noun clause is playing the function of an object of a preposition. Next, similarly, Ali's research report is about how Mary Curie discovered radium. Okay. Now let us see how Mary Curie discovered radium. This is your noun clause. Now, Ali's research report is about how Mary Curie discovered radium. Now here, Ali's research report, okay, this is your, about is your preposition. How Mary Curie discovered radium, okay, this is your noun clause, and Ali's research report is, okay. So this is the sentence which is coming before the preposition. You can say is not responsible. Ali's research report is about, okay. So here, children, sometimes there are a few mistakes that we need to be done. This I'm really not sure. I think we need to check this out. All right. Now let's go to the next one. Noun clauses also perform the grammatical function of appositive. The answer from the company that we buy a new table angers me. My decision for you to leave the day after us stands. See, the answer from the company that we buy a new table angers me. The answer from the company. Now, my decision for you to leave the day after us stands. The news that his father has come is true. So, it is subordinate mane, it is appositive. Appositive mane, the jo subject bisare extra kichi tumko information. The answer from the company that we buy a new table angers me. That we buy a new table is your noun clause. And here the function is that of an appositive. Similarly, the news kaun, news ka bisare, that his father has come is true. Hence, this is an appositive. The noun clause is taking the function of a positive, because it a news bisare, kaun news, that his father has come. All right, let's do exercises, children, then it'll be more clear for you. Now, I wondered what he was doing there. Let us try to understand better this first, right? Jota underline kara hai, that is your noun clause. Now, let first tell me whether this noun clause is performing the function of a subject, object, preposition, or complement, or appositive. Okay. So, 81st question is, I wondered what he was doing there. Here, children, I wondered what he was doing there. What he was doing there is performing the role of a object. Okay. So here the noun clause, what he was doing there is performing the function of an object. Next one. Do you know why he is late? Here again, why he is late is your noun clause. Now, do you know why he is late? Why he is late is performing the function of an object here again. All right. What is in our fate cannot be avoided. Here the noun clause is what is in our fate. What cannot be avoided? What is in our fate? You ask the question, what cannot be avoided, to find out whether it is a subject clause. So yes, it is a subject noun clause. What is in our fate cannot be avoided. Next one. That you should behave like this is, I can't see this here. That you should behave like this is stranger. That means what is stranger? That you should behave like this. Hence here this noun clause, this is your noun clause. And here it is performing the function of a subject. All right. Next one. The news that he's alive has been confirmed. Now tell me, children, what is the noun clause here? The noun clause here is that he's alive has been confirmed. But what is the news about? There is no answer to that. It is telling you about the news. So this is a positive to the subject, to the noun, the news. The news that is alive has been confirmed. Here, the noun clause is playing the role of an appositive to the noun, the news. Okay, news bisare asuchi. The news bisare news ta kono that is alive has been confirmed. News ta hala se bonchichi bili confirm kora hala. Jehetu seta news bisare kuha jaudi. So that is an appositive to the news. Okay. I cannot rely on what he says. Now tell me this, children, you will have to answer this to me. I cannot rely on what he says. What he says is your noun clause. Now tell me, you will have to answer me. I cannot rely on what he says. Now, what is your preposition here? Your preposition is on, and I cannot rely on. Is it a complete sentence? Yes, it is a proper sentence. Hence, I cannot rely on what he says Here the noun clause is playing the role of an object to the preposition on. I cannot rely on what? On what he says. So this is an object to the preposition on. Next one. Shanti didn't know that her uncle had come. So what is it that Shanti didn't know? She didn't know that her uncle had come. So this is an information about Shanti, about the subject. Hence, that her uncle had come. This noun clause is again an appositive to the noun Shanti. Because it is about Shanti. What she didn't know? What Shanti didn't know? That her uncle had come. Okay? Next. Can you tell me who wrote the Ramayana? Can you tell me who wrote the Ramayana? So what is the question we ask? Can you tell me what? Can you tell me who wrote the Ramayana? Here, who wrote the Ramayana? Who wrote the Ramayana? This is your noun clause, and it is performing the role of an object. It is performing the role of an object to the verb. Okay. Next. Mr. Gupta promised that he would put some flowers on her brother's grave. Now, let's see this, children. 1 second. Let me show you. Mr. Gupta promised that he would put some flowers on his brother's grave. This is your noun clause. Now, what is it telling about? It's telling about Mr. Gupta. Mr. Gupta promised what? That he would put some flowers on her brother's grave. So this is again an appositive to the noun Mr. Gupta. Mr. Gupta promised what? That he would put some flowers on her brother's grave. Okay, next one. No one can say how the war will come to an end. Now here this is very important, children. No one can say what? How the war will come to an end. We have seen in complements, whenever the noun clause is going to play the role of a complement, then what happens? The entire sentence has to be put. No one can say what? How the war will come to an end. No one can say how the war will come to an end. Moreover, no one can say, aar kichi meaning achi ki? Aar kichi meaning nahi. So, jehetu aar meaning nahi, and the clause is how the war will come to an end. This is here the noun clause, how the war will come to an end, is playing the role of a complement to the subject. No one can say. Okay, so here it is playing a complement to the subject. Next one. It is certain that we will have to admit defeat. It is certain what? What is so certain? That we'll have to admit defeat. This is your noun clause. But it is certain. It is again an appositive to the pronoun it. It, that we will have to admit defeat. It is certain. It is nirdharita that ame hariba. So jehetu it is about it, the pronoun it. Hence, this is an appositive to the pronoun it. Here, the noun clause is playing the role of an appositive to the pronoun it. I hope, children, you have understood little bit. If it is confusing, we'll do a few more exercises next week, and then we will go to the relative clauses. This is a small exercise for you. Try to fill it up with suitable noun clauses. Okay, I cannot understand dash. They said dash. I think dash. He told me dash. Dash hurts me. Okay, you have to use it with suitable noun clauses only. Let's see if you can do it for the next class. And I will try to do this exercise for you next class as well. All right. I hope you had a good session today, children. I'll see you again next week. Thank you for being part of Aveti. And I'll see you again next week. Take care. Bye-bye.